Have you ever tried yarn from Universal Yarns? In this video, I'm going to show you my first impression and initial review of their products. Hey everyone, in this video I am trying out some yarn from a company that I haven't tried before called Universal Yarn, and this is my first time using their products, so I'm really curious to see how these yarns feel and perform, especially in swatches. And in this video I'll be giving you my honest opinion on everything that I've received here, from color selection to pricing to quality. So stay tuned and I'll let you know what I think. So first up, this yarn was sent to me by Universal Yarn for the purpose of this review so that I could test it out and let you guys know what I think of it. All opinions shared in this video are my own. First of all, let's look at the yarns that I received. So this one right here is called Cotton Supreme, and this one comes in a hank. It is a number 4 medium weight, and this one is actually pure cotton, 100% cotton, and they come in 100-gram skeins. So this particular yarn can be machine washed and dried, and this colorway is called Powder Blue. And this 100-gram hank of yarn retails for $12 US. And this particular line has 45 color options, which is quite a bit. That is one thing I have noticed about a lot of the yarns that they have available, is that a lot of them come in quite a few different color options. They come in a lot of colorways. Overall, this yarn feels very soft and smooth, and you can tell a lot of things about a yarn just by the way it feels once you have kind of become familiar with the texture of different types of yarn and different yarns that you've used and liked versus didn't like. And just from the feel and the look of this particular yarn, I can tell that this will work up very soft. It does have just a little bit of a fluff to it, meaning like the strand of yarn is not super dense and rope-like, a lot like a lot of dishcloth yarns or yarns that are sold and marketed for dishcloths. But this particular yarn is definitely a soft, smooth, not scratchy or rope-like texture. And it does have a very smooth spin to it, but it does have a little bit of surface fuzz. Not really any more than you would see out of your typical cotton yarn, but compared to like a mercerized cotton yarn, which doesn't really have any surface fuzz, this does have a little bit. But it is about the same amount that you would normally see on your typical cotton yarn. But this one is definitely a softer worsted weight cotton yarn. So if you like to make kind of higher end soft dishcloths, then this would be a good option, but this would also be an excellent option for garments because of the texture of it, and it's so soft. And it's totally machine washable. So if I were to make a whole project out of this, I would probably go for something that would be a garment or accessory with some kind of open stitch pattern so that the fabric could breathe very easily. And I think this would make a very nice, flowy, warm weather friendly summer project, like a garment or accessory project. And this would wash very nicely and have a very smooth, soft, pliable texture to it. So this is the regular Cotton Supreme, but this one right here is called Cotton Supreme Waves, and this is a cake yarn that has multiple colors in it, and it's kind of along the lines of a Caron cake or something like that. But this is also, again, a very, very soft, pliable cotton, which I really like to see in a cotton yarn. And this one is actually a number 3 weight yarn, which is thinner than worsted. So we would also call this light, number 3 light or DK weight. And this one is also 100% cotton. And they also come in 100-gram skeins, just like the regular Cotton Supreme. And this one is, again, machine washable and dryable. Now, this colorway is called Abalone, and it has some kind of peach and a soft blue, like a periwinkle blue, a lavender, and in the middle here there's a little bit of kind of an aqua, a very muted aqua, that you can't really see very much of, but there's just a touch of that in there. Now, this one is also $12 per 100-gram skein, and it comes in 18 different colorways, which are all these multicolored cake yarns. So this one would again make a very nice, easy care, washable, flowy, soft draping garment. So if I were to use this in a project, a full-size project, I would definitely use this for garments or accessories that are, like I said, for the other yarn, open and flowy, and this would drape nicely and wash very well. So now let's grab this other hank yarn. This one is called Wool Pop, and this is a blend of bamboo, superwash wool, and polyamide, which is a synthetic. And something about the way that the different fibers take and don't take the dye leaves this kind of, it's not heathered, but it's like a mixed texture look, where that if you can see that there's some of the fibers in the strand that are lighter, a lighter shade. So it gives a nice depth to the color, but it's not like a variegated or tonal yarn. Now this yarn also comes in 100-gram skeins, and this colorway is called Darling Pink, but it comes in 30 colors total. And for the feel of this one has a very, very nice, soft, squishy feel. There is no scratchiness to this whatsoever, which is typical of a superwash wool, because when a wool fiber is treated so that it can be washed in the washing machine, then the treatment process removes that kind of scratchy, prickly feeling that you can sometimes get from a typical wool yarn that is not treated to be a superwash wool. So this one is a very soft, smooth, nicely spun yarn here, and the texture of this is, like I said, very soft and springy. So I would use this for pretty much anything. This feels like a very soft, durable, versatile yarn that you could use for most any project. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about wool is that it's actually a temperature regulating fiber. So it's not just for keeping warm, it can also help keep you cool. Of course, you wouldn't want to put on a wool garment that was really thick, but if you were to make a lightweight project that included some wool in the fiber blend, that can also be appropriate for warmer weather. So this would be a good yarn for pretty much any wearable item for various times of the year, including warmer weather if you use a lightweight open stitch pattern and make a nice breathable fabric from it, but it would also be great for a winter or cold weather project as well. This would make a very nice sweater. So next up, we have this yarn right here, which is called Vireo, and this one is another medium weight yarn, or number 4 worsted. So this one is 80% tencel and 20% wool, and this has a very, very soft, smooth, no fuzz texture to it. And no fuzz is something that I love to see in a yarn that I would use for a summer project or a warm weather project, because fuzz is one of the things that traps body heat and makes warm projects warm for cold weather. So this is a very smooth, fuzz-free or almost completely fuzz-free strand. It does kind of have a looser spin to it, so that is really good if you want a lot of drape, but you just want to make sure that as you use it, you don't want to like untwist it too much. So you wouldn't want to use techniques that would untwist the yarn a lot, because it's kind of untwisted to some degree and it might be slightly prone to splitting. But it's not super loose, but that slightly loose twist to it will give the yarn a very nice, soft, flowy drape. Now, this yarn is also machine wash and dry, and this colorway is called Feather Light. This is $16 for a 100-gram skein, and it comes in 16 colors. So next up we have this yarn that is labeled as Curio, but this yarn, as of the time of this filming, is actually being rebranded, and it is now called Uni Merino. And that is because this is a blend of superwash merino wool and nylon. So this is basically a sock yarn. This is the type of yarn you would normally use for knit or crocheted socks. And this has a lovely feel to it as well. And as with most sock yarns, this is a number 1 super fine, which is also called fingering or sock weight. It again comes in 100-gram skeins and is machine washable and dryable. Now, this colorway is called Wisteria, but it comes in 50 different colors, which is a very nice selection of colors. A lot of yarns do not come in that many colors. So this one is $14.50 per skein. Now, what would I use this for? I would use this for socks, obviously, but if you're not a sock maker or sock knitter or sock crocheter, then you could definitely use this for a lot of other projects as well. This would make a lovely sweater. It would make lots of different types of wraps and accessories, pretty much anything where you would want an easy care, washable, lightweight fabric. So this would make a fine gauge sweater, a fine gauge hat, scarf, whatever type of project you would want to make. This would make a lightweight, thinner fabric. So although it is, yes, primarily designed for socks, this yarn would be an excellent choice for any kind of fine gauge project that you might want to make where you would still want it to be washable. And as I mentioned previously with the other yarn that contained some superwash wool, this has zero prickliness to it. It is very soft and squishy and smooth, and there is no scratchiness to this at all. So if you typically have a reaction, like a sensitive, irritated skin reaction to wool, then try some superwash wool, because superwash wool does not have that prickliness that some low-quality non-superwash wools tend to have. So next we have this one, and this is called Bamboo Pop. And this is a blend of cotton and bamboo. It's a number 3 light or DK weight. And this yarn comes in 100-gram skeins as well. So this colorway is called Lily Pad, and it is $11 per skein. Now, this yarn comes in over 70 colors, which is a lot. That is a huge range of colors compared to most lines of yarn that have multiple colorways available. So this one comes in kind of a ball-shaped cake, and as you can see from the way this is kind of loosened up as it has been handled, this is one of those kind of very pliable, looser spun yarns. And you can see here where the end of the outside of the skein is. This has multiple plies to it. So it has these little plies. They're like mini strands of yarn that are spun together to make the full strand. And this would make a very nice warm weather project with a lot of drape to it, and it would make a very fluid, drapey fabric. Now, one issue you might run into with a yarn like this is a little bit of splitting, just because there are multiple plies to the yarn and it is a more loosely spun yarn. But the perk of that loose spin is the drape. So like I said, this would be a great yarn for any kind of warm weather project. And last but not least, we have Bamboo Pop Sock, which is the sock yarn version of the Bamboo Pop. So this is bamboo, cotton, and PBT, which is polybutylene terephthalate. It's classified as a polyester, but it has a lot of stretch to it, kind of like Lycra. And the point of that stretchy fiber in there is when you're using a fiber that doesn't have a lot of spring to it like wool does, bamboo and cotton on their own do not have that much elasticity and stretch and spring to them. So like this yarn that is superwash wool and nylon, it will have a good amount of kind of elasticity to it, not because there's any elastic fibers in the yarn, but just because wool kind of has a springiness to it. Bamboo and cotton don't have that springiness. So when you add a stretchy or elastic fiber to the yarn, then when you knit with it, that will improve the elasticity of the sock. So when you see a sock yarn that has an elastic fiber in it, These I would typically use mainly for socks or even for hats or gloves or something where you want a lot of elasticity and stretch and spring to the fabric. I have made a couple pairs of socks with elastic yarns before. It kind of has less of a soft fuzzy feel. It's not lack of softness. There's still softness to it, but it doesn't have the same fuzzy softness as a regular sock yarn, but rather it has a different texture of softness, and that elastic fiber in there can help make the sock more stretchy and less likely to get kind of stretched out and saggy. So this yarn I would definitely use primarily for socks or hats or gloves, where you're not going for drape, you're not going for stitch definition, you're going for more of a stretch and elasticity and spring to the fabric. But this yarn has a little bit of a crinkly texture to it. So this would be something you would not use so much for stitch definition, but more for the overall feel and texture and elasticity of the finished sock. So between these two sock yarns, if I were going to make a plain sock or a sock with a very simple texture that didn't really need to stand out, then I would use this one for the elasticity. If I was using a sock pattern that had a lot of texture to it, that had cables or some kind of textured stitch, then I would go with a regular sock yarn like this one. So this colorway is called Moon Dust, and it's kind of a silver gray. And this retails for $12 a skein, and it comes in 22 solid colors. But it also comes in a multicolored version. So there are additional colorways available if you like multicolored, kind of the self-striping or variegated style sock yarns. So now that we've looked at all of these different yarns, I'm going to pick one out and I'm going to make a little bit of a swatch with it and just kind of get a feel for the texture and the quality and see how it works up in a swatch. Alright, so now let's talk about the quality of these yarns. So I've picked out two of these yarns to swatch with, and I've got a swatch here with the Tencel and Wool blend, and one with the sock yarn. So this swatch is crocheted, of course, and it is alternating rows of double crochet and single crochet. And the fabric here is definitely like I expected it, very soft and fluid, and this would have a lovely drape to it if this were a garment or some kind of flowy accessory. As I had anticipated as well, I did get a little bit of splitting. Of course, how much splitting you see in a yarn will depend on both your hook or needle and what type of hook or needle you're using, how sharp the tip of it is, and the spin of the yarn. Of course, because this is a looser spun yarn, then yes, you will see a little bit of splitting. That is normal for a yarn like this, but it also, that looser twist helps to give the fabric that lovely drape. So I don't really mind having an occasional split strand of yarn when I can get a very fluid, pliable fabric like this. So this would definitely be a great yarn for a garment. The feel of it is very soft, and this would be very nice against the skin. So that is my crocheted swatch here. And I also knitted a little bit of garter stitch with this sock yarn. And a sock yarn should typically have a good amount of springiness and elasticity to it. This does just that. Of course, garter stitch has a natural elasticity, but this, because it is a superwash wool, it has a very nice kind of springy texture to the fabric. And that is really good when you're working with any kind of course, a sock, but any kind of project where you want the fabric to have some structure to it while still being soft and pliable. So I would definitely use this yarn for socks as well as plenty of other types of projects. But yes, this has been thus far in my swatch a very nice quality sock yarn, and the texture is very nice. And of course, because it is a fine gauge yarn, it is also very pliable, and this would have a nice drape to it as a garment as well. So quality-wise, I think that overall these yarns are of very nice quality. Of course, I haven't made a project with all of them yet, but I think these are definitely a very good quality yarn as far as the brand as a whole from what I have tried and felt thus far. And overall, in their total selection of various yarn lines that they carry, they do have a pretty good selection of different fiber contents and different types of yarn, so that whatever time of year it is and whatever type of project you want to make, they have a yarn with an appropriate fiber content for various times of the year and types of projects, different textures and amounts of drape and different fiber contents. So they definitely have a very nice selection and variety of yarns. Alright, so now let's talk about pricing. Every one of the skeins of yarn that I have on this table in front of me retails for over $10, and at least one of them retails for over $15 for one skein. And compared to what you would typically pay for yarn at a big box craft store, that is kind of on the higher end of the price range that you would typically see in a standard craft store. So these may not be the most inexpensive, budget-friendly yarns that you could buy, but they are definitely nice quality yarns, and if you're looking for something that is more of a higher end luxury type of yarn, or you're looking for a specific fiber content, that's when I think you would go for a yarn like this. So, overall, would I recommend Universal Yarns? Well, I think that whether these yarns or this brand in general is a good choice for you is going to depend on what you're looking for. If you are just wanting a basic machine washable acrylic, for example, you can get a pretty decent machine washable acrylic yarn from most yarn companies. But I would definitely recommend checking out Universal Yarns if you are looking for something specific, or if you want kind of a higher end natural fiber yarn, something you would typically find in your standard craft store. They do have a pretty good variety and selection of yarns that tend to be a little bit more specialized and a little bit more high end than some of the yarns you would find at Hobby Lobby or Joann Fabric or places like that, or like Michael's even. So if you tend to prefer the higher end natural fiber types of yarns that you may not typically be able to find at your local craft store, then I would definitely recommend checking out Universal Yarn. You can shop their site at the link below, and you will find all of these yarn lines along with a whole bunch of other yarns that they carry as well. And as you shop, I hope you will find a yarn that you will love working with and that will make a beautiful project for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you try out Universal Yarns, let me know how you like it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.